There was no telling him that. All right.
That doesn't sound terribly defensive.
It is, because there's a lesson to be learned about men and women in there. I'm going to go OTP again here. Because he got into a back and forth with someone on the end of the van. And they had both been on this route before. And she would say, he would say, and she would say, and he would say, and we were driving us all crazy to the point where they all said to me in sign language, "You've got to do something, Peter." So I talked to Andy, and he said, "Why don't you do me a favor?" No, Andy, listen, time out. Andy, favor. Okay. Scientific experiment. We're going to have a scientific experiment here. Next time the woman says something, don't say anything back. No. This has nothing to do with science. This is about science. I want you to measure, watch what happens. And then we'll talk about it. No. First the experiment, then the science. God, I want that. He did. Came this way, he didn't say anything. And that was the end of it for the rest of the 3-hour trip together to Washington. At some point, we were in the men's room together, and he looked at me and said, "How do you know so much about women, Peter?" And I said, "Andy, do you want to be happy, or do you want to be right?" That's what I know. You can't be both, my friend. You can't be both. And he scratched. I think that never made him, I think he never fully understood that, but the scientific method got him. He saw incontrovertible proof. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will keep happening. So, my other story with him was one other time we traveled together. We did often. I was in shotgun. And I was listening and responding, as Jonathan said, for what seemed like an eternity, when suddenly my eyes just went helpless, dead weights. I was asleep, totally asleep in the passenger seat. I don't know, could have been 15 minutes, 10, an hour. But when I woke up, he was still talking about the same subject. I thought I was in a dream. We had the most interesting conversations about words like encomium, obstreperous, probity, and my favorite, randomicity. God forbid I should suggest to him that a word like that did not exist, because I never heard the end of it. He refused dictionary after dictionary after proof. No, I could not win that. And now if I could, just to close, turn to the meaning of the other word, character. I can honestly say I've never met anyone with a kinder, gentler, and fairer nature than Andy. Through highs and lows, good times and bad, shenanigans and brouhahas, he rarely had anything negative to say about another human being. Reminded me of Will Rogers. I never met a man I didn't like. He'd never say that, I think. It's a bit naive of him. And maybe that's too extreme, but it's pretty close. I have often said just said it last week. If I were on trial for a serious crime, murder, assault, rape, arson, the person I would want for a judge was Andy. I thought he was one of the fairest people I've ever met. And I knew, for better or for worse, I'd get a fair shake. He'd beat you to the ground with an argument. You couldn't shift his philosophy about big government, little government, randomicity. It's a digital world, Peter. No, couldn't make any headway there at all. But in terms of fairness, if you were going to, in trouble, you need a fair shake. He's the person you want on your team. So that's kind of where I am, the 6 characters, and I thought I'd close by reading a poem Andy wrote as a young man. And it was, let me see where he was. I have copies of this poem if anybody would like to have it after we start talking to each other, and I be quiet here. I'm going to make it under an hour, that's for sure. This was from originally written in 1954, which would make Andy 28, 38, 48, 58, 16 or so? 26? 26.
54, 26.
Written in 50, so he'd be 26.
26.
Okay. So these were some thoughts he had in 1926. Are you
1950.
got something? Is that, am I right? 26.
He was 26 years old in 1954.
Right.
correct?
Right. Thank you. Malik and Danica or Luann, this poem, no. Okay. So, and it's called The Veil Beyond. And I know this is how he felt about that unknown country to which he's gone, but whose character will never be forgotten. This is by Andrew Malcolm, and it is called The Veil Beyond. Maybe before I read it, Andrew was about a generation and a half a generation ahead of me. And one of the things that changed in that time is the presentation of written material, speeches, epilogues, prologues. It shifted from an emphasis on what today we consider recitation to a focus on presentation, which today means acting rather than rote memorization. I'm not criticizing it, I'm saying it seems by our standards you memorized something and then you recited it. Shift now in the schools is it is presentation and or acting more character. So back to The Veil Beyond. It begins this way. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas. He loved poets that were never popular, except with the general public. He loved Wordsworth. He loved Lowell. He loved Longfellow. As I said, he was not big on the modern poets, the doom and gloom, the complicated, even Walt Whitman, not big on free verse. So if this reminds you of anything that some of us may have studied in school after a certain, or before a certain age, it's because he was very influenced by those folks, Wordsworth, Longfellow, Chambers. The Veil Beyond. When the fog comes rolling in, and the earth is veiled therein, I leave my crackling fireplace to search my soul in another place. I wander on a path from home, a winding trail of beaten loam, a way which has been traveled long, and oft has heard the hoofbeat song. Yeah, the leaves that once were gold have dropped to earth, their resting bed. As I plod upon this trail, I think of what our lives entail, of how a road is like a life, of parting ways, hills of strife, rocks, puddles, moss, and stumps, of fields and gates and garden pumps. As on a road we've wandered anew, we know not what lies out of view. Our feet we move on spongy sod, as rough or smooth the way we trod. Now, looking forward to new days, we see reflections beyond the haze. The way ahead, blue-gray dawn, then in the distance, the veil beyond. So if other folks would like to share any memories they have of Andy, I could go on about the man for a long time, but please feel free now.
I'd like to jump in just because jumping off of your poem.
Sure.
I'm an emotional person and I'm pregnant, so. But the last moment we had with Andy as a family, we were in my car And I said to Andy, so are you going to be the IRT ghost when you leave us? And
That's nice.
it was a conversation I had with him that I always wanted to have with my grandma before she died. And I know she's always with me, but I wanted to say to her, so I said to Andy, when you're gone, I still want to talk to you. I still want you to be with us. And I want you to be the IRT ghost.
That's very sweet.
And he kind of jumped from that into a poem that he recited to both Mike, Daniel, and I. And he would always send us these letters. So I would love for Mike to share, because this is the last letter that he sent to us.
Which of many, and as we all know from Andy, he was a great letter sender. So this was August 12th, 2017. Hi Mike, you seem moved by my reciting of the Longfellow poem, A Psalm of Life. So I thought I'd send you a copy of it in a brochure I'd never finished. I don't know what that means. I don't know what brochure he was working on. I intended to send this to all to yous who knew my Aunt Jessie, 1890 to 1968. My father's youngest sister, who was 5 years older than he was, 1895 to 1935. A great lover of specificity. I never published it as I could not figure out how to get the picture to print correctly. So I just printed the picture for you. Maybe I'll find out how to get the picture right someday and complete the project as I intended it. Most of the poetry I learned when I was in my Aunt Jessie's 6th grade class, 1942 to 1943. I'm the only one of her nieces and nephews who had her as their teacher, and I lived with her from 1948 to 1954, and she lived with me from 1957 to 1961. Thanks so much for visiting. It means a lot to me to have you and Corey and Daniel to visit when I'm no longer able to travel. And this was A Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, and life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act, that each tomorrow finds us farther than today. Art is long, and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating, funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant, let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sand of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. And that was his parting words to our family.
And two more things I want to share as far as the ghost story. So Daniel was in the car with me this morning, and I helped Malik get into IRT, and Daniel was in the car, and when I went back into the car, Daniel said, "Mommy, Andy's in the car with us." And he's sitting up front, and he gave you a hug and a kiss. So they say that children see things that we don't see.
Yes.
So I guess officially today he has become the IRC ghost.
Lovely, lovely. John, I know you wanted to say something. I'm wondering as we go on, could people just think of how would you, if you had one word to describe one experience you had with Andy, what would it be? I'll give you, maybe Mike is here, so just pick an adjective, just out of the many you could use.
Wow. Verbose.
Okay. How about Mary?
Intrepid.
Intrepid. And I'm sorry, I don't know your dad's name.
Ted.
Ted.
I didn't have the pleasure or honor of knowing Andy as well as all of you. They were really just basically superficial visits that I saw here at IRT, picking up my daughter and seeing him also at a show. But I have to say, not to him, but for me, is regret that I didn't have the opportunity to really to gain the type of mentoring, if I will, that some of you have had, are fortunate enough to have had with him. And it's my loss. It's my loss.
I think you would have enjoyed talking to him. John, I know you want to say something, but just one adjective.
Well, exasperate.
And I'm sorry, I forgot the name. Michelle. Okay. Or you could just throw out an adjective.
Caring.
Caring. Okay.
I mean, I didn't really know him as well as Michelle did.
Okay.
Because he was her uncle. And I came with her a couple of times. The first time I came, he was one of the Santa Andy.
And he was the sweet old man. He was very kind and outgoing.
Always very kind
Yes.
and outgoing and loving and accepting of everybody.
Indeed. Indeed.
That's how I
Thank you.
Judy, me?
Thank you.
Okay. So I have to change the topic too, because I have to go back to what Corey said. So, Corey, he's here in this theater. He visited me. I can feel when people are around, and while you were speaking, I definitely felt that he was here. So I can validate it for you.
Thank you. John, did you ever meet him?
I met him twice.
Okay.
And I was just very generous.
Generous. Lovely. Eric?
He took mine. I was going to say generous.
You can swear. Did we get everybody? Danica, you met him.
Presence.
Presence. Yes, that's one of the adjectives I came up with. He
Absolutely.
was. Presence. How would you say?
I'd say presence.
Yeah, presence. That's my
Present
presence.
as gifts or present?
No, I mean,
Having a presence.
He was here.
Presence.
Yeah.
A presence.
Actually, both.
Both.
He
That's
said
true.
present
Yeah.
and had presence. Both. Yeah.
Okay, that's
He had a wonderful presence.
Ah,
And gave lots of good presents.
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
double
Presents.
entendre.
Some of the other quotes he would often say to me are when things weren't going well and I was in charge, or he was in charge and I was his subordinate, he would make this go away beer. He had a unique way of complimenting people, not just me. I'll give my story and not the other people, but he'd once seen me on stage at NTID and said, you did a good job on the stage, Peter. Notice I didn't say excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. I have a picture of him standing by a tree that I wrote a couplet for. Lovely smiling picture of him. And what I wrote says, here stands a man of mirth and zest. Of all life's lovers, he was the best. That's presence and presence. John, did you want to?
yeah, I don't remember why we were driving, Andy and I were driving back to New York City. But he said, I want to take a detour. Not a verbal detour, an actual detour.
No.
Yes.
He said that.
Yes. So we drove to off the highway onto a ridge on the Palisades, overlooking Yonkers. And he said, I often stop here because over there is a church, and over there is Andrus. And when they came and took my mother away, and then took us to Andrus, from my house, I could see the church, and then from Andrus, I realized I could see the church as well. And that calmed me down and allowed me to accept where I was. And he says, when I die, I would like my ashes to be scattered here.
Oh, interesting. 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 Food for thought. Thank you. One time I asked Andy why he talks so much. Or it may have been Luann, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure I asked that several times.
And rarely did I ever get an answer. First of all, 20 years, trying to get the gumption, why ask somebody to do something.
That's highly ironic. The one time Andy did not have an answer.
He eventually said, dead air. And I took that to mean that silence was not golden for him. Silence was something else. It was not alive. He was loyal to his friends, as I think I've said, despite their political differences. And one way he displayed that was a good friend, another teacher at NTID, was running for office, a county office as a Democrat, and he sent her $37. Why did I do that? Of course, he made a whole story out of it. I'll give you the brief version. That was, at that time, the amount of postage for 100 stamps. And he knew that postage was a very expensive part of conducting a political campaign, and he wanted to show his support for her commitment to public service. Even though, as he had a way of doing, he added, I sure hope you don't win. He always gave with the one hand, the guy took it back with the other.
That reminds me,
Yes.
during, I think, the last gubernatorial, it was the one where the Republican was a very crazy person. John,
That was 2 ago.
Two ago. He announced to me that he voted for the Green Party person for governor, I'm a Green Party member, because he couldn't vote for a Democrat. No, he wouldn't do that. But he couldn't vote for the Republican either. So I said, if I can help them get on the ballot, 50,000 votes and get on the ballot, that's, I'll do that. So we voted for the Green Party.
It looks like Michelle's been inching closer to the edge of your chair.
Can we help? Or you
Okay.
Oh, that was in
You want to
Howie's
go
office.
first?
Howie's
Do you need a hand?
There we go.
Okay.
Stretch your legs, you're awake now.
Hello. Hi, I'm Michelle, and this is Sabrina. Unfortunately, she never got to meet my Uncle Andrew, but we connected later on in life, and he would send me invitations to the Christmas dinner, and I never realized that he was coming on his way back from Andrus, and he would come dressed up, but his suit was put away, but he still have a red shirt on. So one year, I asked him, can I be your elf? So for the past 2 years, I got to be his elf along with Hank, and the pictures over there, and it was a lot of fun just seeing the smiles come to those children's faces and the surprise when they were opening their little presents. And then I decided to continue his tradition this year, and I came by and dropped off a few gifts for the girls. And another memory that I'd like to share is the first year after I was married, my husband and I wanted to visit Niagara Falls in Canada and visit him in his house, and he insisted on driving us from his house, no matter what the traffic or the weather was. It was pretty hot, and he insisted that he had to drive us there and walk around with us, because if not, we wouldn't find parking, and he would show us some fun places to go, and he was just very welcoming in his house, and just making sure we had a good time, and told us the history all about Rochester that weekend. Many stories, museums. We went to the Susan B. Anthony Museum, and we learned so much from him. And he was always kind. He was always caring towards our family, even though we lived about 5.5 hours away. When my mom was dying, he came to visit us, and he stayed with us the whole week and made sure that we went out to breakfast. And we actually went to that spot that somebody was telling a story about on the Palisades, overlooking the water. And we just sat there telling stories, and he would point out where Andrus is and Yonkers on the other side of the water. And he would very often just call and share stories about family, and he would send letters about the family history and family trees. Yeah. Oh, you want a nap? You want to say hi to everybody? Sabrina. I know that she would have loved to sit on his lap as Santa Claus and pull on his beard. But he was just such a caring, generous, thoughtful person. And I'm happy that we got to become close later on in life and build that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to jump in and thank Mary for putting together the plaque that's going to be on IRC's walls
I'm
forever.
not sure if people have seen that.
No.
No.
Okay.
That's the preliminary one.
Correct.
The final one is going to be grass. And
Oh, nice. Look at this.
Oh.
Beautiful.
It was a wonderful project with partnership with Corey and Peter and Luann and myself, and we worked collaboratively beautifully, and I enjoyed it. And it was very special for me to be able to participate and to honor Andy that way. And I did want to just add one other thing is through Andy brought me to IRT and Corey. The one year when we had reconnected after a few years, Andy and myself, and he let us know, my husband, that he was coming down to be Santa Claus, and there would be a party afterwards at IRT or across the street. And that's where I met you guys, I think, but Corey and Mike and a lot of others, and talked about the involvement, and we were talking that I do marketing, and Corey said, I could use some help, and I said, okay. I haven't helped as much as I'd like, but that became a wonderful relationship, and I have Andy to thank for that.
Nice connection.
Eric, you look like you had something.
Yeah, actually, Corey gave me something that our former CEO wrote, but do you want to put in your password?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a picture of Andy on the wall with our former CEO, Nancy Ment, the CEO of Andrus, where Andy grew up, and she sent along some words. Andrus, the former orphanage where Andy grew up, is celebrating its 90th year in 2018. I, meaning Nancy, worked at Andrus from 1987 until she retired in 2013, and it was there that I met Andy when he played his role as Santa. In the past 6 months, I've been working on a prose and a pictorial history of Andrus that will be published and distributed in November. Andy has a prominent place in the history for many reasons. Not only did he flourish there and find his way to a richly fulfilling life, but he maintained a loyalty to the institution, most especially to the children who, year after year, find a way forward in spite of many odds against them. Andy was a remarkable, spirited, funny, talented, kind, and generous person who made an indelible mark on the world and on those who were fortunate enough to know him.
That's lovely.
Lovely.
Well, maybe we should enjoy some bites and some individual. Surely. It's okay to.
Yeah, I'm the only one that's not going to be able to read because I've seen it.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, I could do this.
If not, I will.
Oh, I see.
No.